The hum of cicadas filled the desert air as Ethan Carter sat under the open hood of his truck, a wrench in one hand and a cold beer in the other. His workshop was little more than a weathered garage on the edge of nowhere, surrounded by dunes and scattered scrub brush. Ethan liked it that way, quiet, isolated, free of people asking questions about his past. He wiped the sweat from his brow and took a sip of beer, sighing. The stars stretched endlessly overhead, a stark reminder of how vast and empty the world felt. He preferred it to the noise of cities or the suffocating camaraderie of the military. Here, he could tinker, survive, and be left alone. The solitude was shattered when the night sky exploded with light. A streak of fire carved a blazing arc across the heavens, its roar louder than any jet Ethan had ever heard. The object streaked toward the horizon and slammed into the earth with a deafening impact. The ground beneath Ethan trembled, knocking tools off shelves and sending his beer bottle rolling across the floor. "What in the hell?" he muttered, grabbing a flashlight and his rifle. His military instincts kicked in, and he sprinted toward the source of the crash, boots kicking up sand. The air grew hotter as he approached the impact site. A faint, otherworldly hum pulsed through the desert, resonating in his chest. When he crested the final dune, he froze. Before him lay a spacecraft, sleek and metallic, its smooth surface glowing faintly in the moonlight. It was like nothing he'd ever seen, an elegant blend of technology and art, with markings that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Smoke billowed from the wreckage, and a soft blue light flickered along the ship's hull. Ethan approached cautiously, the rifle tight in his grip. As he neared, the ship's hatch opened with a soft hiss. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. A figure emerged, staggering down the ramp. She was tall, her lithe frame draped in what looked like a shimmering, iridescent suit. Her skin glowed faintly, hues of blue and silver shifting with the light, and her large, almond-shaped eyes glimmered with intelligence and pain. She stumbled and collapsed into the sand, clutching something tightly against her chest. Ethan rushed forward, still wary but driven by instinct. He knelt beside her and saw that her arms cradled three small, glowing orbs, each pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. "Please," she whispered, her voice soft and melodic, though her words were barely comprehensible. "Help them." Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. This wasn't some experimental aircraft or advanced drone, it was alien, and she wasn't human. Every survival instinct screamed at him to turn around, to leave her and the strange orbs behind. But her eyes, filled with desperation and an almost human vulnerability, wouldn't let him walk away. "All right," he said gruffly, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. "Let's get you out of here." He lifted her carefully, noting how light she felt despite her height. The orbs she carried emitted warmth, and their glow grew faint with each passing second. Whatever they were important. She clung to them even in her weakened state. The trek back to his workshop was slow and arduous. The heat from the crash site followed him like a wave, and the alien woman's labored breathing quickened with each step. Ethan glanced over his shoulder repeatedly, half expecting something or someone to come looking for her. When they reached his garage, Ethan laid her on a makeshift cot in the corner. He grabbed a medical kit and hesitated before starting. Her physiology was a mystery, and he had no idea if human remedies would help or harm her. But the basics, cleaning wounds, bandaging lacerations, seemed universal enough. As he worked, she stirred, her voice a weak murmur. "My children." Ethan looked at the orbs she still clutched protectively. "Those things? Are they alive?" She nodded faintly, her luminescent eyes locking onto his. "They will be." Ethan leaned back, exhaling sharply. "Great. This just keeps getting weirder." The woman drifted into unconsciousness, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts. He sat back, staring at her and the strange orbs, a storm of questions swirling in his mind. Who was she? What had happened to her ship? And why had fate dropped her along with what she called her children right into his life? The answers would have to wait. For now, he had a mysterious alien to save and, apparently, her family to protect. The stars outside his window twinkled coldly, as if mocking him. Ethan had wanted solitude, but the universe had other plans. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of soft humming. Blinking against the sunlight streaming through the garage's dusty windows, he turned toward the alien woman. She was awake, sitting up on the cot, her head tilted slightly as if listening to a distant melody. The three orbs, still faintly glowing, floated in the air around her, orbiting her like moons around a planet. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "Glad to see you're not dead." The woman turned her gaze to him, her large eyes shimmering. "You saved me," she said, her voice still weak but more coherent than the night before. "Thank you." He pulled a chair over, sitting at a cautious distance. "Yeah, well, you kind of crash-landed in my backyard. Not like I had a choice." Her lips curved into what Ethan assumed was a smile. "You could have left me." He shrugged. "I'm not that much of an ass. So, care to explain what you're doing here? Who you are? And what those glowing balls are?" She hesitated, looking at the orbs with a mixture of love and fear. "My name is Zyra. I am from Althenia, a planet many light years from here. These." She reached out, touching one of the orbs gently. "That are my children." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Children? How's that work?" Zyra tilted her head, studying him. "Our species reproduces differently than yours. Our offspring develop within energy stasis pods until they are ready to emerge. The pods ensure they are protected and nurtured until they reach the correct stage of development." Ethan stared at the orbs, their faint glow pulsing in rhythm. "And they're alive in there?" "Yes. But their energy is depleting. Without a proper recharge, the stasis will fail, and they will not survive." Her voice trembled. "I escaped with them when my ship was attacked, but the power core was damaged during the crash." Ethan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Attacked? By who?" "Raiders," she said, her eyes darkening. "They are scavengers, preying on vulnerable ships and colonies. They wanted me. And my children." "Why? What do they want with you?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Our people are unique," Zyra explained. "Our energy can be harnessed, extracted, and used as a powerful fuel source. To them, we are nothing more than resources." Ethan let out a low whistle. "That's messed up." "Yes," Zyra agreed. "And now, they will come here. They will track my ship's energy signature and find us. I cannot let that happen." Ethan frowned, his military instincts kicking in. "How long until they get here?" "I do not know," Zyra admitted. "But I must prepare to leave. My children will not survive another attack." "Leave? How?" Ethan gestured toward the wreckage outside. "Your ship's a smoking pile of junk." Zyra looked down, her expression one of despair. "I do not know." For a long moment, the two sat in silence. Ethan mulled over the situation, weighing his options. On one hand, this wasn't his problem. He could walk away, let her figure it out, and return to his quiet life. But something about Zyra's vulnerability gnawed at him. She wasn't some soldier or criminal, she was a mother trying to protect her kids. And the way she looked at those orbs reminded him of a time he'd buried deep, a time when he'd failed to protect someone he cared about. Finally, he sighed. "All right. Let me take a look at your ship. Maybe I can rig something up." Zyra's eyes widened with hope. "You would do that for me?" "Yeah, well, don't get all teary-eyed about it," Ethan muttered, standing. "I'm good with machines. Let's see if I can't work some magic." Ethan spent the day inspecting the wreckage of Zyra's ship. The hull was scorched and bent, and most of the systems were fried. But the deeper he delved, the more he marveled at the ship's design. Its technology was far beyond anything on Earth. Intricate circuits that pulsed with light, panels that responded to touch with fluid motions, and an engine core that hummed faintly despite its damage. Zyra stayed by his side, explaining the purpose of various components. Though Ethan didn't fully understand the alien tech, he grasped enough to get an idea. "Your power core's toast," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "But maybe, if I can reroute some of the energy from these backup conduits, I can recharge those stasis pods of yours." "Will it work?" Zyra asked, her voice tinged with both hope and doubt. "Can't say for sure," Ethan admitted. "But it's worth a shot. Better than sitting around waiting for those raiders to show up." Zyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm. "Thank you, Ethan. You are very kind." "Don't go writing poems about me just yet," he said, brushing off her gratitude with a smirk. As night fell, Ethan returned to the garage, rigging up a makeshift energy converter using salvaged parts from the ship and his own equipment. Zyra watched him work, occasionally asking questions or offering suggestions. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. It was strange, working alongside someone so different yet so familiar. At one point, Zyra spoke softly. "You are very skilled. Your machines, your hands, they are like those of an engineer on my planet." Ethan paused, his hands tightening around a wrench. "Used to be a soldier. Fixed a lot of things back then, vehicles, weapons, you name it. Now I just fix whatever comes my way." Zyra tilted her head. "Why do you live alone?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Let's just say people aren't my thing." Zyra seemed to sense his reluctance and didn't press further. Instead, she looked at the glowing orbs, her expression softening. "You remind me of someone I once knew, a protector. He would have done the same for us." Ethan glanced at her, then back at his work. "Yeah, well, let's just hope this protector can keep you alive." By midnight, Ethan finished the energy converter, a cobbled-together device that hummed with barely contained power. He hooked it up to the stasis pods, holding his breath as the orbs glowed brighter. "It's working," Zyra said, her voice filled with relief. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "Let's hope it keeps working." As the pods pulsed steadily, Zyra's gratitude was evident in her glowing eyes. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that their time was running out. The hum of the converter was reassuring, but in the back of his mind, he knew the raiders weren't far away. Ethan sat slumped in a chair, exhausted from another long night of tinkering. The energy converter hummed softly, its rhythm steady and reassuring. Across the room, Zyra knelt beside the three glowing orbs, her hands gently tracing patterns in the air around them. The faint light from the orbs illuminated her face, which was a mixture of hope and deep worry. "How much longer until, they hatch?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. Zyra looked over her shoulder, her expression solemn. "Their energy levels have stabilized thanks to your device, but the stasis is still delicate. When the conditions are right, they will emerge." She hesitated, as though weighing her next words carefully. "It could be hours. Or moments." As if on cue, one of the orbs began to pulse rapidly, its glow intensifying. Zyra gasped, rushing to its side. Ethan stood, his pulse quickening. The orb vibrated, the light within swirling like a miniature storm. "What's happening?" he asked, stepping closer. Zyra's voice was a mixture of awe and urgency. "The first one is ready. The stasis is breaking." Ethan watched, his breath caught in his throat, as the orb began to crack along glowing fissures. A soft, melodic hum filled the room, and then, with a final burst of light, the orb shattered. For a moment, Ethan shielded his eyes. When he looked again, he saw a small, luminous figure lying in the remnants of the orb. The creature was no larger than a human toddler, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver and eyes that glowed faintly. It had delicate features, tiny hands, pointed ears, and a faintly translucent quality to its body. It blinked up at Zyra and let out a soft, musical chirp. Zyra's face lit up with joy, tears streaming down her cheeks. "My son," she whispered, cradling the small being in her arms. The little one chirped again, nuzzling against her. Ethan stood frozen, unsure what to say or do. He'd seen a lot in his life, but nothing came close to this. "That's your kid," he finally managed. "Yes," Zyra said, her voice filled with wonder. "His name is Corin." As Ethan processed the sight, the second orb began to pulse. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," he muttered, stepping back as the process repeated. The orb cracked, the light surged, and another small figure emerged, this one slightly smaller and with a faint bluish hue to its glowing skin. "This is Ryle," Zyra said, holding the second child close. Before Ethan could catch his breath, the third orb followed. When it broke, the smallest of the three emerged, a female with a faint golden shimmer to her form. Zyra lifted her gently, smiling through her tears. "And this is Lyra." Ethan stared at the three glowing beings, now chirping and cooing in their mother's arms. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. "You really weren't kidding about the whole kids and orbs thing." Zyra laughed softly, her relief evident. "They are here. They are safe." The triplets, curious and unsteady, began to crawl and explore. Corin stumbled toward Ethan, his glowing eyes wide with curiosity. Ethan knelt, unsure of what to do as the tiny being reached out and touched his hand. The sensation was warm and oddly calming. "They like you," Zyra said, watching with a smile. "In our culture, they would see you as their protector. Perhaps even as a father." Ethan's eyes widened. "Whoa, let's not get ahead of ourselves here." Corin chirped happily, climbing onto Ethan's knee, while Ryle and Lyra followed suit. Before he knew it, all three were clambering over him, their soft, melodic sounds filling the room. "Well, aren't you three clingy?" he muttered, though he couldn't hide the small smile tugging at his lips. "Guess I'm stuck with you." Bonding in danger. The days that followed were a whirlwind for Ethan. The triplets grew quickly, their physical development astonishing him. Within a week, they were walking, albeit awkwardly, and mimicking his movements. Corin, the boldest of the three, seemed fascinated by Ethan's tools, often trying to pick them up with his tiny hands. Ryle was quieter, preferring to observe from a distance, while Lyra had a mischievous streak, sneaking around the workshop and tinkering with whatever she could find. Despite himself, Ethan found their presence oddly comforting. The garage, once a haven of solitude, now buzzed with life and laughter. He taught the triplets small earth habits, how to stack blocks, how to drink water from a cup, and even how to wave. They, in turn, adopted his mannerisms, their glowing eyes filled with admiration whenever he spoke or worked. "They adore you," Zyra said one evening as they watched the triplets play. "Yeah, well, they're not bad company," Ethan admitted. He glanced at her, his tone growing serious. "But we've got bigger problems. You said those raiders would track you. Any idea when they'll get here?" Zyra's smile faded. "It is only a matter of time. The longer we stay here, the more vulnerable we become." Ethan nodded, his military instincts kicking in. "Then we'd better be ready. If they come, we fight." Zyra hesitated, her gaze dropping. "I cannot ask you to risk yourself for us." "You're not asking," Ethan said firmly. "This is my home too. And I'm not about to let anyone hurt those kids or you." The first sign. As the sun dipped below the horizon one evening, Ethan was outside gathering scrap metal when he saw a faint, shimmering light streaking across the sky. It wasn't a meteor. His stomach dropped as the realization hit him. They're here. Rushing inside, he grabbed his rifle and the cobbled-together energy weapons he'd been working on. Zyra, get the kids and hide. We've got company. Zyra didn't argue, scooping up the triplets and retreating to a concealed corner of the workshop. Ethan stood by the entrance, his heart pounding as he scanned the horizon. The distant hum of an alien craft grew louder, the light growing brighter. They weren't just here, they were closing in fast. Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon, a fierce determination in his eyes. He wasn't a soldier anymore, but tonight, he was a protector. And he wasn't going down without a fight. The alien craft descended with an ominous hum, its sleek, dark silhouette illuminated by glowing green lights that pulsed rhythmically. Ethan crouched by the entrance of his workshop, rifle in hand, heart pounding. Behind him, Zyra huddled with the triplets in the far corner, her glowing eyes locked on him. "Stay out of sight," he whispered, his voice sharp but steady. "No matter what happens." Zyra nodded, clutching her children close. The triplets, sensing the tension, chirped softly, their glowing forms dimming as if to hide. Ethan exhaled slowly and adjusted his grip on the rifle. "All right, let's see what these raiders are made of." The raiders arrived. The raiders emerged from the craft, their forms hulking and grotesque. Their skin was a dark, leathery texture, and their armor gleamed with jagged, alien metals. Each carried weapons that pulsed with dangerous energy, their designs as alien as the craft they arrived in. At their head stood their leader, a towering figure with glowing red eyes and a voice that resonated like a growl. Zyra of Althenia, the leader called, his voice amplified by a device on his armor. "Surrender yourself and your offspring, and this planet will be spared." Ethan stepped into the open, his rifle raised. "You're not getting anything," he barked. "Turn around and leave before this gets ugly." The raider leader tilted his head, his glowing eyes narrowing. "A human? This is not your concern, Earthling. Leave now, and you may live." "Not a chance," Ethan said, his voice cold. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The leader let out a deep, guttural laugh. "Foolish. Very well. Kill him." At his command, the raiders charged, their weapons lighting up with bursts of energy. Ethan dove behind a pile of scrap metal, the first volley of plasma bolts sizzling past him and scorching the sand. "The fight begins." Ethan fired back, his military training taking over. His shots were precise, striking weak points in the raiders' armor. One raider fell, its weapon clattering to the ground, but the others pressed on, their heavy footsteps shaking the earth. Inside the workshop, Zyra held the triplets tightly, her heart racing. She could hear the sounds of the battle, Ethan's shouts, the crackle of plasma, and the guttural roars of the raiders. Her instincts screamed to protect her children, but she also knew Ethan couldn't fight alone. She reached for the energy staff she had salvaged from her ship, a weapon unique to her people. Its crystalline blade hummed to life in her hands, radiating a bright, otherworldly glow. "Stay here," she whispered to the triplets. "Do not come out until I return." The children chirped in protest, but Zyra was already moving, her lithe form slipping into the shadows. Zyra joins the fight. Ethan was pinned down, his makeshift barricade sizzling under the relentless plasma fire. "A little help would be nice," he shouted, reloading his rifle. As if in answer, Zyra emerged from the workshop, her energy staff glowing like a beacon. She moved with grace and precision, deflecting plasma bolts with the staff's blade and striking down a raider with a single, fluid motion. Ethan blinked in surprise. "Well, about time." "Less talking, more fighting," Zyra replied, her voice sharp but filled with determination. The two fought side by side, an unlikely but effective team. Ethan's precision shooting paired with Zyra's fluid combat style created chaos among the raiders. They adapted quickly, Ethan using the alien weapons he'd scavenged to match the raiders' firepower, while Zyra's staff carved through their ranks like a blade through paper. But the raider leader was no fool. He barked an order, and a group of raiders broke off, heading toward the workshop. "They're going for the kids!" Ethan shouted. "The triplets' intervention." Inside the workshop, the triplets huddled together, their glowing forms dim as they listened to the approaching footsteps. Corin, the boldest, chirped loudly, his small hands glowing as if in protest. Ryle and Lyra joined him, their tiny forms beginning to radiate more brightly. When the raiders burst through the door, the triplets reacted instinctively. Corin released a burst of energy, a pulse that sent the first raider stumbling back. Ryle followed, emitting a high-pitched sound wave that disoriented the attackers. Lyra, smaller but no less fierce, darted between the raiders, using her glow to create confusion. The raiders hesitated, clearly unprepared for the triplets' abilities. The distraction gave Ethan and Zyra the time they needed. They stormed into the workshop, Ethan's rifle blazing and Zyra's staff cutting through the remaining attackers. "Good job, kids," Ethan said, scooping up Corin as Zyra dispatched the last raider. The final showdown. The raider leader, furious at the failure of his soldiers, stormed into the workshop. His red eyes glowed menacingly as he leveled a massive energy cannon at Zyra and the triplets. "You think you've won?" he growled. "You cannot stop me. You will all die here." Ethan stepped forward, his rifle aimed squarely at the leader. "Not on my watch." The leader fired, but Ethan was faster. He dove to the side, firing a shot that struck the cannon, causing it to explode. The leader roared in rage, charging at Ethan with a massive blade. Zyra intervened, her staff clashing against the leader's weapon in a shower of sparks. The two engaged in a fierce duel, Zyra's speed countering the leader's brute strength. Meanwhile, Ethan took aim, waiting for an opening. "Now!" Zyra shouted, dodging a swing. Ethan fired, his shot striking the leader squarely in the chest. The raider stumbled, his weapon dropping to the ground. Zyra delivered the final blow, her staff glowing brightly as it pierced the leader's armor. The raider collapsed, his red eyes dimming as he let out one final growl. "This isn't over," he muttered before falling still. A new beginning. The battle was over. The desert was silent once more, the raider's craft smoking in the distance. Ethan leaned against the workshop's wall, breathing heavily. "You all right?" he asked Zyra. She nodded, though her gaze lingered on the triplets, who were now chirping happily as if the danger had never existed. "Thanks to you." Ethan glanced at the kids and smirked. "They're tougher than they look. Must take after their mom." Corin toddled over to Ethan, tugging on his sleeve. "Dad," he chirped, his glowing eyes bright with excitement. Ethan froze, his heart skipping a beat. "What did he just call me?" Zyra smiled softly. "In our culture, they see you as their protector. To them, you are family." Ethan stared at the triplets, who were now all climbing on him, their laughter filling the workshop. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought he'd lost, a sense of belonging. "Well," he said, ruffling Corin's head, "guess I've got 3 little troublemakers to look after now." "And their mother," Zyra added, her voice warm. Ethan grinned. "Yeah. I guess that too." As the stars sparkled above, the unlikely family prepared for their new life together, ready to face whatever challenges the universe might throw their way.